Hey folks, just a quick reminder before we dive in. Make sure to follow Sky Alert USA to catch this video and all the important updates we got coming your way. And if you want to help us out, go ahead and subscribe, like, and drop a comment down below. We really appreciate your support. Major weather events across USA and Canada. December 31st, 2025. Breaking weather news. New Year's Eve brings severe conditions, coast to coast. As we close out 2025 on this New Year's Eve, December 31st, North America finds itself in the grip of a powerful and dangerous weather pattern that has brought catastrophic conditions to millions of residents across the United States and Canada. From historic atmospheric rivers flooding Southern California to a devastating bomb cyclone bringing Arctic blasts to the Midwest and Northeast, this is turning out to be one of the most significant weather events of the winter season. Current situation: multiple weather emergencies underway. Today, December 31st, 2025, represents a critical moment in what has become a multi-day, severe weather outbreak affecting vast swaths of North America. The National Weather Service has issued numerous warnings, watches, and advisories spanning from the Pacific coast to the Atlantic seaboard, impacting more than 100 million Americans and millions of Canadians. Southern California is currently facing one of its most dangerous weather scenarios in recent memory. An atmospheric river has brought torrential rainfall to the region, arriving on New Year's Eve, and, it's expected to continue into New Year's Day. The Weather Prediction Center has issued a Level 2 of 4 flood threat for much of Southern California, with coastal and valley areas, including downtown Los Angeles, expected to receive between 1 to 2 inches of rain. Meanwhile, foothills and mountains could see 2 to 4 inches. What makes this situation particularly dangerous is the ground saturation from previous storms that battered the region during Christmas week. The soil simply can't absorb any more water, so even moderate rainfall rates will trigger flooding, mudslides, and debris flows. Governor Gavin Newsom has pre-positioned emergency resources throughout Los Angeles and Ventura counties, including 7 swift water rescue teams, helicopters, and specialized equipment to respond to what officials are calling a life-threatening situation. The timing of this storm is especially unfortunate, as it coincides with the 137th Tournament of Roses Parade in Pasadena, scheduled for Thursday morning, January 1st. According to the National Weather Service, this will mark the first wet rose parade since 2006. Rain arriving Wednesday night will affect parade goers who traditionally camp along the route, with downpours continuing into Thursday morning. Areas in San Bernardino County, particularly Wrightwood, remain under evacuation warnings following devastating Christmas Eve flooding that left the community buried in mud and debris. The bridge fire burn scar in this region is especially vulnerable to mud and debris flows. California officials are warning residents that with rainfall rates rather than totals being the determining factor, problems can emerge quickly as California rings in the new year under yet another active weather pattern. While Southern California battles flooding the eastern two-thirds of the nation, is experiencing the aftermath of a powerful bomb cyclone that rapidly intensified early this week. A bomb cyclone, which meteorologists define as a storm that undergoes rapid intensification measured by a large decrease in atmospheric pressure over 24 hours, has brought Arctic air plunging southward across the country. The storm system has created a dramatic temperature swing that forecasters are calling, honestly, unprecedented. Cities across the central and southern United States went from temperatures 20 to 30 degrees above average over the weekend to 10 to 15 degrees below average by Tuesday. St. Louis experienced this whiplash weather firsthand, setting an all-time December record high of 78 degrees on Sunday afternoon before plummeting to the low 20s with snow just 8 hours later. Currently, on this New Year's Eve, lake-effect snow continues to pound regions downwind of the Great Lakes. Winter storm warnings remain in effect through Thursday morning, with snow totals potentially reaching a staggering 2 to 4 feet through the end of the week. New York State emergency officials have warned of snowfall rates as high as 3 inches per hour in the heaviest snow bands, creating near-blizzard conditions across parts of Wayne, Cayuga, Onondaga, Oneida, and Madison counties. The Syracuse area is experiencing whiteout conditions, prompting Governor Kathy Hochul to urge residents in impacted areas to avoid all unnecessary travel. Buffalo, New York, experienced truly extreme conditions earlier this week, with hurricane-force wind gusts reaching 79 miles per hour in downtown areas. This marked Buffalo's strongest wind gust in more than 45 years. High wind warnings affected more than 114 million people across the eastern United States as the cold front moved through. The Arctic air mass that followed the bomb cyclone has brought dangerously cold temperatures to vast areas of the central and northern United States. Wind chills as low as -30 degrees Fahrenheit have been reported across parts of North Dakota and Minnesota, creating conditions where frostbite becomes a real and immediate threat to anyone spending extended time outdoors. This frigid air has pushed unusually far south, with sub-freezing overnight low temperatures reaching as far as the Gulf Coast. Freeze warnings, watches and cold weather advisories have been issued across the southern United States, affecting regions unaccustomed to such extreme cold. The National Weather Service notes that the frontal passage will bring daytime high temperatures 20 to 25 degrees colder compared to the previous day across much of the eastern United States. The holiday travel period, usually one of the busiest times of the year for air travel, has been severely disrupted by these weather events. More than 9,000 flights within, into or out of the United States were delayed on Monday, with about 850 cancellations following similar impacts on Sunday. The Transportation Security Administration had identified Monday and Tuesday as two of the busiest air travel days of this holiday period, making the disruptions especially impactful. Ground transportation, honestly, has fared even worse. Interstate 75 in Michigan was shut down for hours on Monday after a weather-related pile-up involving at least 50 vehicles, including several semi-trucks. In Iowa, Interstate 35 was completely closed due to zero visibility conditions created by the blizzard, with state patrol officials urging travelers not to seek alternative routes because of the extremely dangerous conditions that could lead to deadly consequences. Minnesota has reported hundreds of crashes since the storm began Sunday, including 31 with injuries. The Minneapolis-St. Paul area has accumulated nearly 6 inches of snow, with wind gusts exceeding 30 miles per hour, creating hazardous driving conditions across the metro region. Canada has not been spared from this weather onslaught. Environment Canada has issued multiple warnings across Ontario, Quebec, and the Maritime provinces. Orange winter storm warnings are in effect for communities including Sault Ste. Marie and Kirkland Lake, where up to 40 centimetres, about 16 inches, of snow is possible. Freezing rain warnings are widespread across eastern Ontario and southwestern Quebec, with communities preparing for ice accumulation that could cause significant damage to power infrastructure and make travel treacherous. Parts of New Brunswick and Nova Scotia are expecting between 4 to 8 millimetres of freezing rain, with the precipitation potentially continuing into Tuesday in some areas. British Columbia's interior is dealing with its own winter weather challenges, with parts of the province near the Yukon border, including Atlin and Highland River Park, expecting heavy snowfall totals between 15 and 25 centimetres. The North Coast region, particularly inland communities such as Kitimat and Terrace, could see even higher amounts, with 20 to 30 centimetres expected. New Year's Day will continue the active weather pattern across North America, though some areas will begin to see improvement while others face ongoing challenges. In Southern California, the atmospheric river will continue to impact the region throughout New Year's Day morning, with the heaviest rain expected during the early hours. As an upper-level shortwave moves into the coast, winds will turn out of the west-southwest, maximizing upslope enhancement of rainfall just as maximum forcing moves ashore. Precipitable water values between 1 and 1¼ inches will be 3 to 4 standard deviations above normal for this time of year, which really indicates exceptional moisture availability. The threat of flash flooding, mudslides and debris flows will remain elevated, especially in burn-scar areas. By afternoon, the rain should begin to taper off, though saturated ground conditions will continue to pose risks. Turning to the Great Lakes and Northeast, lake-effect snow will remain intense downwind of Lakes Erie and Ontario. An Alberta clipper system will reinforce Arctic air across the upper Midwest, Great Lakes and Northeast regions. Snow squalls are possible across the lower Great Lakes during late afternoon on New Year's Eve, with the threat moving to the Ohio Valley and through the interior northeast during overnight hours into New Year's Day. These snow squalls, though brief, create whiteout conditions that are extremely hazardous for drivers. In the Midwest, a quick warm-up is in store for the northern and central plains beginning New Year's Day, as the midweek Alberta clipper spreads mild air down the Rockies and into the plains. However, this will be short-lived, as the associated cold front will plunge temperatures over the northern plains later in the period. The temperature outlook for New Year's Day calls for continued cold across the eastern United States, with temperatures remaining 10 to 15 degrees below average. The western United States will experience near to slightly above average temperatures, creating a stark contrast across the nation. On January 2nd, the second day of the new year, there's a transition in weather patterns for many areas, though winter weather hazards will persist in key regions. In California, a second, stronger atmospheric river system is forecast to make landfall along the northern and central California coast early Friday, January 2nd. This system will bring heavier precipitation compared to the New Year's Eve storm, with the focus shifting northward. Rainfall rates could again exceed 1 inch per hour in favoured locations, and the Weather Prediction Centre maintains concerns about additional flooding given the already saturated soil conditions. Coastal flood advisories are in effect through the weekend due to tidal flooding risks in low-lying areas. For the Great Lakes snowbelts, lake-effect snow will continue to accumulate in traditional snow belt areas southeast of Lake Erie and east of Lake Ontario in western New York. The multi-day event that began earlier in the week will persist, with additional accumulations possible. Some locations that have already received several feet of snow may see more, potentially setting records for early season snowfall totals. In the northeast and mid-Atlantic, conditions will gradually improve across much of the region, though lingering lake-effect snow bands and snow showers will continue in favoured downwind locations. Temperatures will remain well below normal, but the most intense Arctic air will begin to moderate slightly. Across the central United States, the quick warm-up that began on New Year's Day will continue across the Central Plains, with temperatures rebounding to near or slightly above average. This warmer air will begin to spread eastward, setting up a potential clash with cold air that could generate additional weather systems later in the period. By Friday, January 3rd, the overall weather pattern begins to shift, though winter conditions will remain a factor across much of North America. In the Pacific Northwest and Northern California, rain and mountain snow will be commonplace across West Coast states as short waves and onshore flow continue to affect the region. The atmospheric river pattern that has dominated recent days will begin to break down, but periodic systems will continue to bring precipitation to coastal and mountain areas. For the Great Lakes and Northeast, lake-effect snow will finally begin to diminish as the wind direction becomes less favorable for heavy snow production. However, residual snow showers and snow squalls will remain possible. The snowbelts of western New York will have accumulated potentially record-breaking snowfall totals for the period, with measurements approaching or exceeding 4 feet in the hardest-hit areas. In the Midwestern Plains, an upper-level ridge will reach the Plains region, bringing widespread above-average temperatures to areas that were recently experiencing Arctic conditions. This dramatic temperature swing is typical of winter weather patterns, but the magnitude of the change will be notable. Down in the southern United States, a wave of low pressure develops along a frontal boundary, bringing higher rainfall chances across the southeast. This will mark a transition toward a more active southern storm track that could persist into the following week. And up in Canada, conditions will gradually improve across much of eastern Canada, though winter weather will remain a factor in snowbelt areas along the Great Lakes and in mountainous regions of British Columbia. Temperature moderation will be welcome news for areas that experience the coldest conditions earlier in the week. Given the ongoing and forecasted dangerous weather conditions, officials at all levels of government are emphasizing several critical safety messages. For California residents, never attempt to drive through water-covered roads. Water may be moving much faster than you think, and it only takes 6 inches of moving water to sweep a person off their feet, or 1 foot of water to carry away a vehicle. Heed all evacuation orders and warnings immediately. Do not wait until conditions deteriorate further. Avoid parking under trees or power lines during high winds or heavy rain, as saturated soil can cause trees to uproot unexpectedly. Check on neighbors, especially older adults or those with disabilities, to ensure they are safe. For folks in the Midwest and Northeast, avoid all unnecessary travel in areas under winter storm warnings or blizzard warnings. If you must travel, make sure your vehicle is equipped with emergency supplies, including blankets, food, water, and a charged phone. Be aware that snow squalls can create sudden whiteout conditions with zero visibility. If you encounter a snow squall while driving, slow down immediately and increase following distance. Dress appropriately for the extreme cold. With wind chills reaching -30 degrees in some areas, frostbite can occur in minutes on exposed skin. Check on elderly neighbours and those without adequate heating to ensure their safety during this cold snap. For all travellers, monitor weather conditions closely and consider postponing travel if severe weather is forecast for your route. Check flight status before heading to the airport, as delays and cancellations remain likely in many areas. Allow extra time for all travel and expect slower speeds due to weather-related impacts. Keep emergency supplies in your vehicle, including jumper cables, flashlights, and first aid kits. The severe weather has taken a significant toll on power infrastructure across multiple states. More than 100,000 customers lost power in California during the peak of the atmospheric river event, with additional outages occurring due to high winds. In Michigan, approximately 57,000 households were without power overnight earlier this week due to the bomb cyclone's impacts. Nearly 3,000 Southern California Edison customers remain without power as crews work to restore service in areas where access remains difficult due to flooding and debris. Utility companies across affected regions have pre-positioned crews and equipment to respond to outages, but restoration efforts have been hampered by ongoing severe weather conditions. Officials warn that in some remote or heavily impacted areas, power restoration could take days rather than hours. This severe weather outbreak comes against the backdrop of changing climate patterns that are influencing winter weather across North America. The presence of a La Niña pattern in the Pacific Ocean typically results in more active storm tracks affecting different parts of the continent. However, climate research suggests that even as overall conditions may trend toward drier patterns in some regions, the precipitation that does occur arrives in stronger, more concentrated storms, increasing risks from both flooding and drought. California's experience really exemplifies this trend. The state has seen dramatic swings between extremely dry conditions that fuel devastating wildfires and intense atmospheric river events bringing flooding rains. Just weeks before the typical peak of atmospheric river storm activity, Southern California experienced conditions dry enough to contribute to destructive fires. Now, the pendulum has swung dramatically in the opposite direction. The bomb cyclone that affected the Midwest and Northeast demonstrates the continued capacity of winter storm systems to rapidly intensify and bring severe conditions to populated areas. The extreme temperature swings associated with these systems can be particularly challenging for infrastructure and emergency response systems. As we transition from 2025 into 2026, the weather pattern affecting North America shows little sign of immediate improvement. While specific systems will move through and conditions will improve in some areas, the overall active pattern is likely to persist into the first full week of January. Residents across affected regions should remain vigilant, monitor official weather forecasts and warnings closely, and heed all safety advice from local, state, provincial and federal authorities. This is particularly important for those in burn-scar areas in California, where the risk of debris flows and mudslides remains elevated, and in snowbelt regions where accumulations continue to mount. The severe weather has already resulted in multiple fatalities, hundreds of injuries and billions of dollars in damages. As recovery efforts begin in areas where the worst has passed, other regions brace for ongoing impacts. The combination of flooding in the west, lake-effect snow in the Great Lakes region, and widespread cold across much of the continent creates a complex and challenging situation for emergency managers and residents alike. Stay safe, stay informed, and remember that no travel or activity is worth risking your life in dangerous weather conditions. As weather authorities consistently emphasize, turn around, don't drown when encountering flooded roads, and when visibility drops to near zero in snow squalls, slow down and increase following distance dramatically. This New Year's Eve and the days ahead will be remembered as a significant weather event across North America. By taking proper precautions and following official